On today's episode of the Crubcast, we're going to read all of our viewers' hot takes, and by all, I mean every single one, because we're not doing that at all. I'm here with three of my fellow co-Crubbers. Hi, Justin. What's your hot take?
Hi, my hot take is that I don't think that Chick-fil-A is very good.
Okay. We're here with Moriarty. Hi, M.
Hello.
What's your hot take?
I think the Switch is holding back gaming.
Wow. Ooh, we'll get to that one. Okay. And I'm here with Sean. Hi, Sean.
Hi.
What's your hot take?
Butter is overrated.
What does that mean? Okay. And
Butter?
Wait, I don't even know what that means. And I'm Kevin. My hot take is that Crubcast is the best podcast on the internet. That's the coldest take of all. Make sure you hit the like button. Leave us a nice review if you're in the audio realm. We're here on YouTube. We're here in the audio realm. Go to crub.org for any of those links that you would like. And some you don't like crub.org/plushie.
Oh, that's a great link.
Yeah.
No, you got to find that one.
Yeah.
Find that one and search to it.
Let us know what you think. Yeah, crub.org/plushie. So today, instead of doing a viewer Q&A or anything that we wanted to prepare for, we have a list of hot takes from our wonderful Crubscribers. We submitted this over on our Discord, crub.org/join. It's a free to join Discord. And I have a ton of hot takes here that we're going to run through. But first, I think only one of those hot takes was one that we should dig into. Em, why do you think the Switch is holding back gaming? Because that's a great one to start with.
It's okay. So this is my hot take, is that developers have to make their games compatible for the Switch because the Switch has too large of an install base. And because they do that, they are making worse quality games overall in order to fit on the iPhone 5 that the Switch is.
See, my counterpoint would be that just because the game has to be of a lower fidelity doesn't mean that the quality of the game has to change. Like, maybe you can't do some certain things that are like, would use the HD rumble of the PS5 controller or something like that. But like, just because it has to look like a potato now doesn't mean that the original product has to be worse.
Not only does it have to look like a potato, right? But it just in general has to work on this lesser piece of equipment, right? Like the Switch is 8 years old now, and
Jesus,
it is
really?
It's
It's up there.
7.
It's almost
it's going to 8. Yeah, it's
old.
going to 8 this March.
It's very, very old, and it's very, very low power, and it also has 25 million of them. You would be dumb.
25 million is an understatement. I think they're at 140 million right now.
140 million, whatever. The point
close.
is so many of them that you would be dumb to ignore that as an install base. And so, I feel that developers are making games and taking into account this lower quality console. And I mean quality in the most objective way, right? Like, obviously, the Switch is fun and Nintendo games are fun, but there is a reason why we don't see so many third-party games on there anymore.
And I was going to say to that end, I would take the Switch being that and raise you. That's a hot take for a couple of years ago. The current version is the Xbox Series S.
I would agree with that too.
Because the Xbox Series S is required for just about, I think the only Xbox released game that has gotten an exception to being full parity with every feature was Baldur's Gate. They were allowed to cut the co-op split screen from the Series S version of Baldur's Gate 3.
I would agree with that too. I think that the S is holding back gaming.
It's an interesting one because that one actually affects things a little more than I think the Switch does currently. Because most of the Switch games that I can think of that are coming out that are, multi-platform or third party are usually indie or a like specific Capcom game like Monster Hunter Rise. Stuff like that I think is more built for the Switch and for the Switch audience and then ported later. Because Rise is
even
just...
at this...
Good.
Sorry, even at this point, like, you don't hear as much about, like, the Mortal Kombat 1s of the world, where Mortal Kombat 1 came out on the Switch because it had to be more multi-platform, and that game on Switch looks like dog water.
Yeah, it's real bad.
Yeah.
It's
real bad.
To look at, I mean.
It's an interesting one. I think that I'll give you a different hot take, which is that the Switch is holding back some of Nintendo's own developers at times. I'm thinking of Pokemon mainly. Because Pokemon's more a
definitely.
time situation than anything. But you can't tell me that Scarlet and Violet wouldn't have run better on a Switch Pro
Anything?
or a Switch 2
anything.
or an iPhone 6. You know?
It is crazy that we've gotten to this point without a Switch hardware like upgrade at any point. Like
I thought the OLED was the time, right? When they announced or right before they announced the OLED, I was like, clearly this is the Switch 2. It makes sense. It's been 4.5 years, whatever it was, 5 years. It's time. This makes a lot of sense. You put it out, you announce it now, and we get it in a year or two. Then it's a 6-year, generation. Now we're at 8 years, right? Like, it's time.
It's an interesting one because by the time the Switch OLED was actually finally announced, it was too late because we knew, like, okay, if that's not a Switch Pro that's going to stall out a couple of years, we know the next thing's coming out next year, so it doesn't matter. Like, it's such a fascinating issue that they put on themselves, and it's not really an issue for anything outside of performance because, man, sales wise, it's just starting to slow down now, and that's just because they outright said new console next year.
Yeah.
I think it's
so
fascinating.
It's like at a point where
We're seeing people disagree with me pretty vehemently in our own chat because we do record this live on Twitch at twitch.tv/Crub_official. But yeah, so I think I've got the hot take.
That's a good hot take.
It's pretty good.
I will jump to a similar hot take that I had from one of our Crub subscribers. I just have to dig through and find it because there was one related to that.
Okay.
Bear with me as I find it because I don't have these in order.
I'm going to say right now that Chick-fil-A is not very good. The chicken's never crunchy enough. It's always soggy, and you can't get it on Sundays. And you could go to other fried chicken places that make fried chicken, and I think it tastes better, and you can get it on Sundays. And the sauce doesn't redeem it. Chick-fil-A sauce does not redeem it like Raising Cane's sauce does to Raising Cane's. Raising Cane's is not good without the sauce.
That's fair. I'm not a huge Chick-fil-A fan either, personally, but I don't have much to add on that one because the Chick-fil-A as a gaming console is underpowered and trash. So the viewer hot take that I wanted to mention that was similar to yours, was from Larkrin, who said that handheld/hybrid gaming, such as the Switch and Steam Deck, is the only place where gaming console hardware can really be innovated at this point.
Oh,
How do we feel? Hot take?
I kind of agree.
Hot take? Lukewarm?
Actually,
Cold?
I think that's colder because I kind of agree with him, right? Like, I don't think that you can do a whole lot with a standard console because a standard console is a computer and you can't really do a whole lot with that, right? Like, the most you can do is require the use of a controller. And if you do that, controllers have basically become what they are, right? Like, we've had the same controller since the Duke on Xbox original, right? Like, the DualSense and the DualShock are identical with minor changes, right? It would be hard if I had never touched them to put all controllers in front of me and be like, which one came first? It'd be real tough.
That's fair. I will say that I think the innovation that can come from things like controller hardware, which is console hardware in its own way, I think that does have room to grow. I think anyone who played the Switch in its first year was blown away by what HD Rumble did for Mario Odyssey, for example. And then they stopped really using it that often. And the DualSense has a similar HD Rumble thing going on. And it really was only ever a couple things that made use of it. It's mostly Astrobot. And Astrobot is one of those games, because that game's essentially a Nintendo game. It uses every bit of the hardware in a unique way that you then realize you want every game to be that way. You know, like every game with aiming should have a gyro aiming option now. That's just a thing that should exist.
Yeah, why don't they have that? Is it the Xbox holding it back? PC?
Xbox controllers don't have gyro, I believe.
Yeah, they don't.
Haptic feedback on triggers, as Crazy Even said in our Twitch chat, is another one that I was going to say. Like once you feel haptic triggers on pulling back a bowstring or resistance on a gun or anything like that, you can't go back from that. Like you just want that as long as it's good, and you want the ability to turn it off in case it's too much, because there are some games that become too much. But the thing I'll say to handheld or hybrid gaming being the only place where hardware can be innovated, I think going forward, I agree, though we're going to, of course, be surprised at some point when something changes the game somehow, and that's very vague. But I'm thinking like, I was playing Horizon Zero Dawn recently because the remaster is coming out soon, and I was like, well, let me get the Platinum Trophy finally, because I never did some of the side quests. And you don't realize how spoiled you are as a modern gamer until you see a load screen. I think solid state drives were the final frontier of modern gaming hardware, and now that we have that, like, you can't go back. You can't go back to having to look at your phone while a game loads.
Yeah. Imagine just going back to Grand Theft Auto 5 online on the PS3 or PS4, and
it'll be interesting because I think handheld and hybrid gaming having load screens is kind of the next frontier to hit on then. Because if you can speed loading up to the point that you're not dealing with a 40-second load screen in Tears of the Kingdom, that's all that's left to me that I can currently think of.
Yeah, once we go back before the SSD, right? Because, absolutely, solid state changed how all games are done, and now that it's become sort of ubiquitous, you can do games differently. For example, in Star Wars Outlaws, which is not a good game, but it's certainly a new game, if you have a platter hard disk drive, it won't even run. It tells you need a solid state for this because it's intended to work that way.
Returnal is the same way.
Yeah, it's fascinating. Before the SSD, though, in terms of hardware, and we're not talking GPU, right? Because eventually you could go back to the invention of the GPU with the Riva TNT back in the 90s, right? The concept of a discrete graphics card. But other than that, hardware-wise, just in general, you've got, your controllers. So your Guitar Heroes, the touch controller on the PlayStation, joystick and mouse, right? The concept of the dual sticks. And then hardware in terms of running games, right? GPU, SSD. I don't think you can have a whole lot of innovation right now that wouldn't be completely changing up the entirety of the computer and sort of technological world.
I think we need to better use the hardware we have outside of the Switch before we can think about how it can be innovated further. Because there aren't many PS5 games that use the instant loading, the capabilities of instant loading to the degree that you would like to see. Even stuff, because of how long dev cycles are, even stuff like the Rifts in Rift Apart and then Spider-Man 2, those don't really ever get used to a huge degree. And that's a real-time massive open world Portal, for example. That's where solid state drives can go. We just haven't had a game that does that yet because it's that breaks game design in a lot of ways.
Right.
A lot of it is definitely software sided, right? So having the ping feature from Apex, that took over the internet, took over the world instantly, right? Texture streaming is definitely showing up everywhere. And, I think the big update that we've seen in the past year or two that is showing up everywhere is a proper NVIDIA upscaling, right? Where it's doing the DSAA plus stuff, right? We are seeing some very cool graphical updates in terms of software. But hardware-wise, I don't know, man. Even more is I don't expect us to continue doing the Moore's Law thing anymore recently. I don't know that there is a hardware change, and I think that's why you see the handhelds as being so different, is because there's such a change in form factor, but more importantly, their change in use factor. You are no longer sitting on a couch, right? You're no longer sitting on a couch looking at a TV. You're no longer sitting in a desk. In a desk chair, staring at a monitor. And once you take out those two, which are, I would imagine, outside of handhelds, 99.999%, right? Once we take handhelds out of it, that is the way that you interact with most games. I mean, thinking of that, I guess the big change would have been mobile gaming back, 15 years ago as the last big hardware change. And again, that's not so much form factor as it is use factor.
Yeah. I think you can do it. How you design games changes based on where people are playing them. I mean, just about every Switch game has to be bite-sized. That's an internal thing Nintendo only pushed away from seemingly recently. You need to have the ability to put the game down at any point. And I think that, I don't know. I think we need to see developers take full advantage of what we have, because I mean, even down to like the PS5 Pro, for example, that's a situation where that's only for developers that are asking for more because they want to push graphics to another level. But we don't need that. No one really necessarily wants that outside of, well, I want true 4K 60 gaming, which most people don't necessarily actually care about.
Yeah, and if they do, they probably are using a PC.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like that.
Like if they really care about that, then they're using a different form factor.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's an interesting one. I will jump from that to a handheld game because Frankenmutt said that Pokemon Gen 5 sucks.
I disagree.
Is that black and white?
Yes.
Yeah, it's black and white.
Didn't play.
Black and white's one of the best generations in my opinion.
Why?
Black and white are fantastic. They're fantastic games. They're like the last Pokemon games that I can point at and be like, yeah, they didn't have like a time crunch or like a date that they had to hit for those games. Like it felt like they made all these sprites by hand. They did all this great sprite work. They had all animated this time for the first time. Like for more than just the opening cry of them moving from one static image to another static image and like growing and shrinking.
Yeah.
That actually had a very good story in that game. All things considered, it's a Pokemon story, but it's probably one of the best stories in Pokemon games, period.
But Frankenmutt says it sucks.
Yeah.
That's fair.
And I think that is a hot take.
You're not arguing the hot take then. You're just like, yeah, that's fair.
I mean, you can not like it, but like, I disagree.
It's interesting because we're recording this hot off the heels of the massive Pokemon leak that has hit the internet recently. And I think it's very fascinating to see that, as kind of expected, X and Y was the first point. The game's right after Black and White, after Gen 5. That's the point where you can really see the wheels start to come off the development side of the games, which is something I've felt for a long time. It's just interesting to have it confirmed, because you go from having them work on their own pace to Pokemon finally becoming this internationally released, all on the same day and date media machine with X and Y. And you see them rush out Black and White 2. Actually, Black and White 2 is probably where it started. They rush out Black and White 2 to avoid it getting too late into the 3DS without a 3DS Pokemon game. They get to X and Y. They then drop what is, I don't think confirmed yet, but heavily presumed to have been plans for a Pokemon Z to move on to the 20th anniversary game so they can have something new for the anniversary in Pokemon Gen 7. Also, added benefit, they knew the Switch was coming. So you put that game on 3DS in the 20th anniversary year in 2016, and you then rush out the next games the following year, Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, specifically to finish what they hadn't finished in order to get the game done in time for the anniversary, and also just in case the Switch had blown up even faster than it did. So you it's just a constant one after the other crunch from essentially 2013 till now. And it's very it's fascinating that we have a lot of that confirmed. And I can't speak to Black and White because I haven't played them yet, but I can't. That's why I said Justin to argue the hot take, but then he didn't argue the hot take much. So
I just said that it was the.
I can argue the hot take a little bit.
Do it
right.
Do it right now. Let's go.
The designs were controversial, right?
Were they?
Maybe
because they had the vanilla, they had the ice cream Pokemon and the garbage
bag,
Pokemon.
Right?
Oh yeah, that's fair. That's fair. It's an interesting one.
They're am I arguing? I think I'm arguing for the hot take. Actually,
that's fine.
Yeah, I think so.
Be the devil's advocate.
Right?
What do you want me to say about it? Like, it's a really good game. Like, they dared to do something different. They made an entire generation of Pokemon and said, "Hey, you can only use these Pokemon. You don't get Pikachu,"
which of course people would find annoying.
That's the part I didn't like. That's what turned me off of Pokemon for a long time. And I've said this before on the podcast. Like that felt antithetical at the time to the gotta catch 'em all sort of stuff. And that was
then they just stopped caring about it. Yeah.
And then they stopped caring. So now it's a little different. But there was a hot take somewhere else in here about Pokemon.
Also, Black and White released right before the 3DS, right?
2010.
Yeah, it was like a couple years before.
Black and White 2 came out right after the 3DS.
Yeah,
Right.
So
Which
it
Black
would
and
have
White 2
been-
continue the story, which makes it even cooler.
It would
No
have
other games
felt
do that.
maybe a little bit older, right? You're the old style Pokemon, because now I'm on my fresh new 3DS, and here's this old school Pokechew.
The
good.
sprite-based
Pokechew.
Pokemon, yeah.
The similar
I'm the one arguing Pokemon now.
the similar Pokemon hot take, we've converted him with our Pokemon first movie watch along and discussion that we did.
He loved it.
Oh,
He
yeah,
loved
it is
that
right.
That's
movie.
available at patreon.com/Crub, by the way. On the $5 video tier, you can get that, where we made Em and Nico watch the Pokemon first movie and talk about their thoughts, and it is one of the funniest things we've ever done. So you will definitely enjoy that. It's coming to the public feed at some point down the road, too, so make sure you subscribe to the YouTube if you haven't already. And if you have,
Powerful.
why haven't you liked the video yet?
I didn't find it to be funny while I was doing it, because I was mostly confused.
You were very concerned. Well, now you have reason to be concerned after all the
I
leaks.
found out my concerns are all accurate. Yes. I found out that everything that I was like, okay, but what about this? Because this seems concerning. No. It turns out that there was lore about that stuff.
So Chef Kilo had the hot take that I wanted to add to this discussion, because he said that new Pokemon games should only have the new Pokemon in the regional decks to force people to use the new ones instead of just using the old ones. Essentially forcing Black and White on every game going forward.
Ooh. I like Black and
otherwise
White
people
doing
do
it.
tend to do just like, where's my Pikachu, right?
I don't think that people
Yeah.
really do that as much as people think.
People think they do.
Like,
Because
Yeah.
I mean, every time I go to a new Pokemon game, I'm always like, I want to see what the new Pokemon are. So I
here's-
go out
Yeah.
and seek them.
here's the thing. Nowadays, especially, because the dexes have gotten, I mean, given the Gen 9 dex was pretty big, but the dexes have consistently gotten smaller. I think you'd run into the issue at that point of now you need a bunch of Pokemon to fit typecasts.
Yeah.
Because
Like,
then
there's
if
a
you-
reason
there's
there's-
18 types. And if you want to have a dex that is entirely self-contained, you would then need to have several Pokemon that fit each of these 18 types so that you can have a proper Pokemon game, unless you just cut some types out entirely. Like I've Justin, you showed me the Pokemon Sudoku thing way back when.
Pokedoku.
Where you
Yes.
essentially, like, there's different categories on like a 3x3 grid, and it's like, oh, you need to pick a fire type that is also from this region. And when you look at some regions like Gen 6 or Gen 7, or not as much Gen 8, you realize, oh, there really were only 2 fire types.
Yeah, there's not many.
Yeah, like you went through all of Generation 4 with just a Ponyta and a Chimchar. And if you didn't
Yeah.
want a Ponyta, you better have taken Chimchar.
Yeah.
Right.
So
So in that case, that's where you get the vanilla ice cream from, because you
Well,
need
so
to have something.
you need to have an ice
Yeah,
type.
and also
Right.
like there's a reason why Gen 5 has the biggest regional decks of any generation ever made.
Mhm.
And it's because they didn't let you have any other Pokemon from the beginning of the game to the end of the game. So
Yeah.
they needed to have an entirely fleshed out universe of Pokemon in this one generation for it to even work.
Yeah.
Like if you only
Yeah.
have 90 Pokemon in one generation, and remember, 90 Pokemon means some Pokemon will evolve twice, so those aren't 90 unique Pokemon. It's the baby one, then the middle one, then the big one.
Yeah.
It really cuts it down to like maybe 30, 40 different Pokemon.
Right.
And at
It's
that
just-
point, there's just not enough variety.
It's just tough, especially since Gen 5 ran into that with only 17 types, because Fairy type didn't exist until the following generation. So it'd just be so hard to do nowadays, because you would end up with fewer and fewer creative designs when they're trying to force, well, we need another bird. No, you can just
Yep.
put Pidgey in, or any of the other birds. You can just put one of them in. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter. I think there's something
Or
to be
another
said
rodent.
about having a region that does feature, a catered design to have Pokemon from whatever region in them. Like, I really enjoyed Legends Arceus being almost entirely, not fully Sinnoh Pokemon, but there were mostly Sinnoh Pokemon in that dex, because it's in Sinnoh, it's in Gen 4. But there were new variants to be created, B, there were some other ones that would get thrown in there, of course, and C, they put Pokemon in specific spots that felt like an actual ecosystem, which even Scarlet and Violet didn't really do because they didn't have time to. But you can tell that's the idea, is they want to make a Pokemon Tears of the Kingdom, because they just tried Pokemon Breath of the Wild and it turns out it needed more time. So
Good idea, but needed more time.
yeah, because I think Turtwig only exists in like one specific 10-meter area behind a pond.
In Legends, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, same thing with Empoleon. It's like right next to a one little spot. Like you can only find Piplups in this one spot where there's an Alpha Empoleon. That's it.
And like I think that's really cool. I think that's what Pokemon, like that's how you cater Pokemon going forward, is with stuff like that, instead of just cutting down to, no, this is a new region, now we can't have any of these Pokemon here from any of the others. That doesn't make sense, especially because then when you beat the game, are they going to hide a whole extra area of new Pokemon then? Because now we're in the open world era.
They did that in Gen 4.
Yeah.
Right.
So,
like,
but we're not
I
going
could
back
understand
to
if
that.
you did. Yeah, I could understand if you did like the first like 2 areas where it's like mostly, okay, here's like the newer Pokemon, you get your new bird, you get your new rodent. I could see that, but like you still have to throw another Pokemon that have been there for like 37 years at that point. It's
just a waste of time to create a new Pidgey every time.
If anything, they should just really run with the regional variant idea and just have like 50 new regional variants of Pokemon, just to be like, these are the only ones in this region. They're similar to the ones that we've already designed, but there's something different about them.
Yeah.
Yeah, which I like.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's something kind of endearing about that. I just want a new Beedrill.
I love it. Like it gives at least a new lease to life to a bunch of Pokemon that you would not have even thought of. Like the prime one, and to me is Corsola. Like no one's ever using a Corsola. No one is ever touching a Corsola. But then they made a new version that evolved, and it was really, really cool. And it had cool lore. Yeah, and it's like, well, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Now this is cool.
No, I vibe with it.
I do have 2 Zelda ones I'm going to jump to as far as hot takes go here. First one is from Paging Sai, who said that Tunic is one of the best Zelda games of all time, which I think is, to me, a raging hot take, because I did not like Tunic very much.
Wow, because like I really enjoyed Tunic, and I agree immediately. It's like, yeah, no, that's the best 2D Zelda game I've ever played.
I liked the idea of Tunic a lot more than I liked the execution, because there are a lot of, I can't speak in detail because I played it when it came out however long ago, and I don't remember a lot of it. But I remember running into a handful of issues where I got to like one of the end game areas really early, and that would be fine in some 2D Zeldas, but this game has like Soulsy combat for one. And I don't mean that as like the joke. I mean, it's literally got a dodge roll and stamina. Like it's very intentionally Soulsy, which I thought was cool until you get to until you stumble into an end game area and you think that's the way to go, because the game has no dialogue to tell you where to go, which is, I like the idea of that, but I think Animal Well did that a lot better than Tunic did. Because in Animal Well, you can stumble into a new whole Metroidvania area and you can figure it out. In Tunic, if you don't have one of the items that you need to progress, like it's still a classic 2D Zelda design. So you need a thing to progress in like that micro dungeon or whatever, but that's not always an item that's available in that dungeon. So it's very Zelda 1 in that you have to like stumble your way around and then happen to find it somewhere. And then you can go back and progress, hopefully.
Yeah, I had fun with it, but it was very, like you said, it's just hard to navigate. And like sometimes you think, okay, maybe I'm doing this wrong. That's where I should go. And you just bash your head against it for the next 10 minutes and you go a different way. And you're like, oh, there's just this random path over on this side that leads me to a dungeon that has a thing that, okay. I like the idea. I like the idea of exploring, because I love that in the original like Zelda games. I love that. But with Tunic, it just felt like too much freedom to stumble into like the not worst possible things, but like not knowing where to go was just very, I won't say frustrating, but it just kind of like made the game drag on longer than it should have for me. It was just like, I don't want to keep going if I just keep running into the same issue. And if you didn't play for a while, you kind of forgot everywhere you had been to. It's just like backtracking, and it's just
I think making a Zelda game, I love the idea of the cute little in-game manual that's entirely based on a language you can't yet read. I thought that was really cool, that. And discovering that over time, I think it's a really cool idea. I don't think it's good game design at its core level is my issue.
Okay,
because as cool of an idea as it is, in a fully freeform game where a lot of your paths are open to you to explore, you can't make a wordless Zelda game, essentially, because if you do, it has to be closer to like a There's a game Hob that came out years ago. That's also like a
Hob,
top-down
yes.
2D Zelda game.
Yeah.
And I really liked that game. I thought it was really cool. That game is wordless, but it organically guides you to the places you need to go. It's closer to like a Link to the Past, where you just know where to go and you just go and it works. You can still explore, but there's usually one or two paths forward. You can't do a Zelda 1 or a Zelda 2 without words, because the words are there to tell you where to go, and you can't just have a freeform game. You know what I mean? Like,
you do need your I am error in order to understand where to go. But,
I like the idea a lot.
I think Tunic for me just was very enjoyable, right? Like, I enjoyed the gameplay a lot. I thought it was very nice, and I don't know. I enjoyed it, really, right? But looking at it from sort of a objective or semi-objective, is this good? I think there are certainly problems in it. I can respect that take. I don't know. I enjoyed it enough. I think if you like the top-down Zeldas and, you don't want to be placing beds and you want to do combat and you want like more involved combat, then Tunic's a great one, and it's really pretty. One of the prettiest games that came out from that period of
Very
time.
pretty game.
Love the design.
I would recommend that anyone who likes 2D Zelda should play it. I just think that a lot of people will come as maybe not equally, but there will be people that come to the same point of view that Sean and I have, just as much as there are that come to Sai or M, your perspectives. I think it's inherently going to be more controversial a game. Just not in like the usual sense of the word controversial, where it's like, well, this game's stupid. No, it's just you don't like it and you move on. Like, I'm not gonna bitch about Tunic forever, Yeah,
Tunic is surprisingly hard.
Yeah. It's not what I expected the combat to be. When you get to the first like real fight, it's like, oh, this is Dark Souls. That's weird. Like, you don't expect that. I think it's a neat idea, but didn't love it. I'm gonna jump to the other Zelda one that I had a moment ago, which was from Crazy Even, who said that Hyrule Warriors has the best plot of the 3 Zelda games in the Breath of the Wild universe.
Oh, Age of Calamity?
Yeah.
I didn't play it.
It's dog water.
I own that game, and I didn't play it because I played the demo, and I was like, man, I really don't want to play another Hyrule Warriors game right now.
I think that game's plot is real bad poopy, in part because it starts with the end of it's an alternate universe time skip plot.
Yeah,
garbage. Like it is the most Dynasty Warriors crossover game plot that any Dynasty Warriors crossover game has had. Because usually they just don't even try. I can't defend that take. That is a flaming take.
It's before I found out exactly what it was, like, it was pitched to me a different way. It's like, oh, this actually, that's interesting. I like the idea of, like, seeing how this all went, blah, 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 and then realizing, oh, that's not what the game actually is. I'm trying to be as vague as possible. It was that's not
we're this far along. You can say it.
It's like, oh, this actually isn't how Breath of the Wild is set up at all. This is actually just an alternate timeline where everything actually is very different, and we actually don't see the sad stuff happen.
Yeah, like early on when it was announced, like you said, I thought it was going to be Rogue One, and that's exactly what that game should have been.
Immediately, but then it was like, aha, just kidding.
Yeah,
it's actually not at all that. And I'm like, man,
I will say that I think I like Breath of the Wild's plot more than Tears of the Kingdom's, from like when you dig into the plot more, because Tears of the Kingdom is a weird anime plot a lot of the times. It
is.
I think that it salvages it by having one of the best endings that any game has had ever. I think that ending is magnificent. But a lot of my enjoyment as a weird Zelda nerd got soured by the fact that it's just a self-contained universe that undoes so many things that the first game already did just for the sake of doing it again. It's the worst they've ever been as far as foregoing plot points. Like, like they're like actively, they don't acknowledge the divine beasts more than once in the entire game. Which
is weird.
Like they could have even just said, "Oh yeah, we dismantled them. We didn't think about it. We just did." Because that's what they said later was the thing. But how do you not have that in a 300-hour game with 5 million NPCs? How does not a single one, and trust me, I talked to all of them, how does not a single one say that?
Yeah.
It's like such a huge plot point of the first game that it's weird that they're just not there.
How does nobody say, oh, this Calamity is kind of similar, or sorry, this Malice, no, Calamity. One of them's Calamity, one of them's Malice.
It was Calamity Ganon was the one from the first game.
This Malice is just Calamity. How does no one say that? Oh, these sinkholes they're just Calamity from the first, and no one even, like, there are characters you can meet in Tears of the Kingdom that you can meet in a similar quest in Breath of the Wild that don't remember you.
Yeah.
And it's like, this is the guy that saved the world. Everyone knows that he saved the world. You can't just use the "you're a dumb farmer" excuse.
You're like, oh, piss in your shoe. Shut up.
Yeah. I don't know. I think I would probably take what Hyrule Warriors does conceptually over a lot of Tears of the Kingdom. But at its core, Tears is like moment-to-moment stories help carry it. You know?
Mm-hmm.
I gotcha.
Yeah. Justin, what do you think?
If you're talking about original Hyrule Warriors, that story is...
I don't remember that story.
A masterpiece of ass.
I just know it's dumb crossover garbage.
A masterpiece of ass. Yeah, no, it's just straight up, they made this new character named Lana, and she has a book, and it'll save Hyrule, and so they help her. And it's like, what?
That's fine.
Whatever. No, that makes perfect sense to me.
I think the more they try and make alternate universe, like the Fire Emblem one, the more they try stuff like that, the more I'm like, just make crossover games. Don't story, like the story doesn't matter. No one's playing these games for the story. Stop it.
Are you talking about Fire Emblem Engage or Fire Emblem Warriors?
Warriors.
Okay, because Warriors, the original Warriors is just stupid, but it's fun.
That's a crossover one. I'm talking Three Hopes.
Yeah. Three Hopes? Oh, they shouldn't have bothered.
Yeah.
They should not have bothered.
That's another alternate universe timeline thing, and it's like, why?
They did a lot of really cool things with the universe of Fodlan, which a lot of games in the Fire Emblem series don't get the opportunity to do.
Right.
But at a certain point, I don't care.
I couldn't be bothered to care because I would rather see a sequel in that universe or a prequel in that universe than another alternate storyline. And I know a sequel is hard to do because you have to pick one ending and stick with it, but they already do that in a lot of these games. So just man up and have it be a Claude sequel. Like, just do it.
Yep. Just do it.
Like, you could just go to Almyra. Yeah. Screw it. Why not?
I don't know.
Then we got Engage, and Engage was a great game. Terrible story, but great game.
You can polish rings in that game. That's all I remember.
You are the Fire Emblem.
I am the Fire Emblem.
You are the Fire
It
Emblem.
is me. It's me. I am him.
I want to take him to a steaming hot take here.
Oh, okay.
Sonic Adventure 2. This is one-up commentaries. Sonic Adventure 2 isn't only worse than SA1, but it's worse than Shadow the Hedgehog and Sonic Heroes.
You had me in the first half.
I mean, like, I could accept it if you thought that SA2 was worse than SA1, but it was then to say
you had me in the first half.
Worse than Shadow.
And then the second half happened.
No, it's not. That game's fucking trash. It's a broken trash fire that nobody should ever fucking play. What a terrible
Why don't you play that?
Double swear jar. Let's go. That's the hot
Sonic Heroes on GameCube isn't that bad, but like not as good as Sonic Adventure 2.
That's just such a wild.
I watched you play that. I forgot I watched you play that.
Shadow. Here's my hot take, and it's not very hot, but Shadow is worse than 06. I would rather play 06.
Yes. Shadow's terrible.
But he says "damn" in that game.
He does, and the president
says "damn" in 06 once, doesn't he? Somewhere?
I don't know.
I think he does.
I don't know.
Like 06 is at least funny bad. Shadow is boring on top of being bad.
Yeah.
But I can talk to Goku. He's Black Doom, and that's cool.
That's very careful fair with your words there, Sean.
Oh man, I will say that I'm very excited for Shadow's X Generations, just because I'm excited to play that game and not hate every single second of it.
Yeah, it was very interesting to me that they decided to do a Shadow Generations, and I'm like, I'm not against the idea of that.
I'm good with it. That's great, because like I actively hated every moment fun to watch. Of Shadows. It's the worst game maybe ever. I would rather play Shamu. I can't think of a game that isn't like just actively broken. Maybe Jump King, but only in like hour 5 does Jump King become worse than the first few moments of Shadow. It is just bad.
Let me.
So what I'm getting is M does not like streamer rage bait games.
Let me throw a thought out there, and it's probably been said before. Sonic X Shadow Generations is like how the prequels became cool. Like the Star Wars prequels became cool at a point because the people that grew up and liked Shadow the Hedgehog or the Star Wars prequels decided that it's a good now. And
because they had nostalgia, right? So like people have nostalgia for Shadow.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
And I have
no nostalgia for Shadow.
No, same. And I think I think that's what leads to, like, I think at least with Sonic fans, they all know they can say this is slop, but I like it mostly. You know, like we're at a point of a lot more mature Sonic discourse a lot of the time than I think we're used to. Don't get me wrong. It's still rough out there sometimes, but you just don't look at those people.
Yeah, there are just some things with Sonic that's like you play the 2D ones and they're mostly okay. Like, and I would say Sonic Mania is probably like the best one.
Sonic Mania,
and then you get the ones that are like these are good, and that would be like the Sonic Frontiers, Sonic Adventure 1, like the 3D Sonics. There's like they're good. They have some flaws, but they're good. And then you get the ones that everybody knows are bad, but if you like them, then you just have nostalgia for them.
Yeah. I think that Shadow Generations is an incredible idea that's going to work really well. And I'm glad that they have the opportunity to do it. I'm always a little worried that, like, you never know. Like, Sonic's one of the few series that's very good about actually respecting its legacy nowadays. I think they've come around in such a great way as time's gone on, that I'm glad that they have the opportunity to give Shadow fans the game that they've always wanted. You know, assuming that by the time this episode comes out, it doesn't turn out that that's just absolute dog shit. I'm going to assume not, because we're this far out and we haven't heard bad things yet. But
it's so hard to imagine being a Shadow fan because you're not a fan of the game. You can't be. The game is one of the worst things that any human can experience outside of
you're a fan of the character,
actual torture. But like the character, I get it. You think edgy hedgehog cool, you know, Edgehog. Woo, love it. That's great.
That's a word.
Oh, you really love the fact that Edgehog has gun. Cool. I get it, you know?
The thing sorry.
You can't like that game. I just refuse it.
The thing that I always got thrown off by with Shadow, as far as the cool factor that a lot of people feel he has, he wears Heelys.
Yeah, but they're jet Heelys that
they
hover across the air, so he doesn't even have to be fast. He just has fast shoes.
I mean, you're right,
it's
but then
cool.
he still does the slow roller skating animation. Like, it's not like he's running fast.
Yeah.
It's just
that's what I'm saying. Like, he's not specifically fast.
Like Shadow,
he just has shoes that make him go fast.
Shadow is a consistent moonwalker, and
that's fine.
On one hand, that's really cool. Yeah,
it's cool.
On the other hand, from a gameplay standpoint, moving forward and then having him just start kicking and like he's every PS1 game that has like really bad off-synced feet sliding animations compared to the run game. Like it's so weird, and like that's always been a disconnect in my brain. Whenever I play as Shadow in any game, I'm like, but like he's not really fast though. Like
Shadow, if we broke down Shadow, right? Like, Shadow is that character that, I don't know, I feel like there's, what's the Ebony Ravenclaw Darkness?
Oh, yes.
Are you talking about My Immortal?
Yeah. So, like, Shadow was clearly designed to appeal to actual fans of My Immortal, right? Like, not edgy fake fans, but real fans, right? And I'm okay with that. That's fine, right? But...
See, I would have said it's like if Vegeta wore Heelys, because that's what Shadow really is.
That's exactly what it is.
Shadow is Vegeta wearing Heelys.
Bro, and I was a Vegeta kid, and I was a Shadow kid. I like Shadow. Look at my branding. My branding's a black background with a red 9. Like, it's Shadow colors.
That is true. That is true. Do you wear Heelys? We should buy Justin.
I did. I had Heelys. I had Heelys when I was a kid.
He was like, I'm going to be Shadow, and then he fell and broke his legs.
I
Gosh.
fell at Disneyland. I was at Disneyland, and
What were you
it was
doing at
Disney World.
Disneyland?
You were the reason that Healy's got banned at Disney World.
100%. It was me.
I'm not even gonna
You
look
do need
that
them.
up.
I
I'm
bet
just
there
gonna-
are some adult. I'm making.
There are.
There are.
I was
I'm
gonna
not
buy
reviewing
them a
them.
couple years ago. I was like, I want Heelys.
I'm not gonna
But then I
fact
didn't.
check
I'm
that.
gonna
I'm
find you
accepting
some
it.
Heelys, and you're gonna wear them at too many games.
I'm
Uh,
down
I'll
with
buy
that.
them.
I'm down
Absolutely.
with
Yeah.
Give me if you buy me a pair of Heelys, I will take them.
that. I have a quick one that I want to give to Sean specifically because
Oh, God.
you played Overwatch. The mid
Overwatch.
20. Yeah, but Sean played Overwatch. You.
Let Sean play one game. If he's not allowed to play Kingdom Hearts, at least he can play Overwatch.
Oh wait, hold on. I have Kingdom Hearts ones.
God,
No, we can't do
What?
that. You won't understand any of them.
Squidward
There's more
underscore
than one?
5. I'm gonna get Sean. This is a rapid fire round.
okay.
Squidward underscore 5 said Kingdom Hearts 1 is the worst game I've ever played.
Yeah, hot. Wrong.
Frankenmutt said Kingdom Hearts 2 should have been the last game in the series.
I could be okay with that.
Because
I
that
think
ending,
it's fascinating watching Sean imagine
Pretend.
what these games are about.
it does have a very good ending. I could.
Erkman said that Sean doesn't need a second monitor to finally play Kingdom Hearts.
God, accurate, not hot.
And the one that I wanted to get to you for was not about Kingdom Hearts, but kind of could be. The mid-2010s esports era, where every game needed to be an esport, ruined many games like TF2 and Street Fighter V.
Is this
it
my
actually-
Did I make this take?
It
This is-
absolutely eviscerated Street
that
Fighter
was Chef
5.
Kilo. Sorry, I should have said Chef Kilo.
Okay, because like that sounds like something I would actually say.
It
Gosh.
absolutely eviscerated the launch of Street Fighter 5.
Yeah,
And
Absolutely
Overwatch.
eviscerated it. Yep.
yeah. It. Oh God. Yeah,
Because everyone wanted to be a piece of that pie. Everyone
and it
wanted to
was
be the next
ridiculous.
Yeah.
Street Fighter 4. Street Fighter 4 was
No,
super big in
no.
esports.
They
Everyone
wanted
wanted
to
to be
be-
the next Counter-Strike.
They wanted to be the next Dota. Once that international came in and saw that $15 million prize pot, of which that was only 30% of the dollars spent, Valve walked away with $45 million off of the international.
Right.
That's crazy. That's crazy. They did nothing. Right?
Yeah,
like once people saw that money, and then you bring in the Counter-Strike majors, which are doing $1 to $2 million multiple times a year, and they're
you look at
getting
the sponsors.
crazy numbers, right? Like the CSGO's
ridiculous.
IEMs and stuff at that time were doing, and DreamHacks were doing like 1.5 million viewers each. That's some big numbers, big numbers, especially if we're talking 2016, 2017 Twitch, right? Like this is before the Game Awards is blowing stuff up.
Yeah, I remember like late 2010s, early 2020s. Like there were more people watching that stuff than the actual World Series, for crying out loud.
Yes.
Like it blew up.
Yes.
Like
So I
ridiculous.
understand why you have Bobby Kotick, right? One of the shittiest human beings to ever exist in video game history. And he's looking at it going, so Valve made $50 million and didn't do anything. Why aren't we doing that for every single game? And that killed like all of a sudden you had meta, right? And you don't have meta in a casual game. You just don't have meta in a casual. You do whatever you want. Have fun. The entire concept, and this blows people's minds about Overwatch, the entire concept of Overwatch is that everybody would change what character they were every death. Every death.
Oh, you mean
You would
Concord?
go back.
Game Concord.
Gosh,
You would go
Concord.
back every time you
Hit
died and you
game.
would
Hit
change
game
your
Concord.
score. You would change whatever skin you were. You would change your character because you were going to be constantly
Concord?
evolving, right?
Concord
Changing what you're doing
Concord.
in order to respond to what the other team was doing. Now, if you change your character mid-match in a competition match, they will say, why are you changing?
Oh yeah, you don't
Because
do that.
they created a meta that was so staid and so incredibly just stagnant that if you change your character even once, you f***ed it up.
Yeah.
Even once.
Triple swear jar. You're
Also,
paying,
You know what?
like-
We already got it today.
you're paying Chris's salary to.
Chris is going to be working, all right, for the first time.
Also, I will
time.
say,
Work it, buddy.
Like Street Fighter 5 being the esports juggernaut it needed to be for Capcom, because Capcom was a failing company and they needed something to
Yes.
Yeah.
help the shareholders and not sell out to Tencent.
I
It
remember
kind of
that.
worked in their favor in the short term, because Evo, which is like a very Evo was a very traditionally a Capcom fighting game tournament.
Yeah.
They ended up getting an ESPN deal where all of Sunday on ESPN was Evo Grand Finals for all of the main stage games for that year, and it continually happened as Street Fighter V happened. But then the team that was responsible for that beginning of Street Fighter V, they all got fired from Capcom, and the new team that took over Street Fighter V made the last patch of Street Fighter V, which people regard as the best patch of Street Fighter V, and has also been in control of Street Fighter VI. And Street Fighter VI has been a resounding success.
Yeah.
Was that this year? Did that game come out this year? I think it was last year.
I think it's February, actually. No, it was last year. Tekken came out this year. Tekken's also a very good game.
Yeah, Tekken came out the same day.
Tekken's also,
as
that's Bamco, but Bamco is falling over their own feet right now and trying to like not screw everything up.
Well, that's because they're making Smash.
Well, that's not that the issue is that they're not making Smash.
Well, you don't know
that's
that.
kind of the issue.
You don't know that.
Well, that's true.
That was a good answer, Sean.
Yeah, thank you, Sean.
Yeah, you're welcome. I don't even remember what I said about it.
I like how we were both, because I was going to say the same thing.
Yeah. God.
I have another Kingdom Hearts one, kind of. Video editor Logan said Frozen 2 is better than Frozen 1, which is mid AF. Frozen was in Kingdom Hearts 3, right?
Frozen was in Kingdom Hearts 3, yeah.
They
had a whole
I didn't watch
musical
Frozen
number.
2. I didn't watch Frozen 2, but Frozen 1 was just a movie. It wasn't made for me.
No, that was enough. It was a movie.
I watched it.
Is also my take on
times.
Frozen.
The theming of Frozen is very good for younger women, younger girls.
Is it? Is it really?
Because
so. Boy, we could break that one down. Frozen's bad. Frozen's
a thing.
Not good, and none of the takes in it, none of its empowerment is real. It's very bad, very very bad.
The ice.
What they're trying to get at, I like.
I think that goes into another thing I'm going to throw out here because it's another hot take, but I think that goes into any of those YouTube videos where someone says this movie for children is actually awful, like Caillou's a bad role model type stuff, which is always true, but
Caillou sucks.
It goes against the spirit
Caillou,
a little bit.
Caillou wants to kill you. He wants you dead.
Yeah,
I mean, same.
He does.
Larkrin had another one that's related to this in a way. The blank explained YouTube video style has done irreparable damage to the fabric of reality itself. Possibly not hyperbole.
Gosh,
I think that's correct.
Boy.
Astrobot ending explained.
I think.
Yeah.
You know what? Yeah, I don't think that's a hot take.
Yeah,
it's hard because
it's a very lukewarm take.
Yeah, right. Like, so. As a video essayist.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Are you destroying the fabric of reality as we speak?
I mean, I'm shortly.
Maybe never.
Yes.
Soon.
Soon. I promise you, soon.
In 20 minutes.
It's hard to say that, like, I don't understand where that comes from in terms of both why it works on YouTube, where you can't really go into nuance and be like, here's my personal take on the blah, blah. Like, you can't do that.
Yeah.
So, ending explained just kind of, it's what people are going to type. It's what people are going to click. And it's what people do watch. So, on one side, I get that. If we're talking about, like, the actual content of the videos, man, it's hard. Because, like, I think I like the ability as a video essayist to tell you what I think.
Yeah.
I think that with ending explained, I think is where I draw some issue. It's tough because, like, this isn't the same sort of thing, but I made a video with Chris's help a couple of years back before Yakuza 7 came out about, right around when it came out, about where should you start? Because it's such a long series and people aren't going to want to start and say, well, do I play 0? Do I play 1? Do I play 7? Because 7's a soft reboot. Like, what do I do? And even that one, you get a lot of takes that are just, well, this is wrong because, you should start with 0 and like probably. Yeah. But I've still always been adamant that you start with 1. And like, that's just my opinion because most of 0's coolest stuff references the rest of the series. So it's a prequel that isn't intended to be the starting point for the series. It just happened to also be that for many people.
Right.
And I think it makes it tough because when you're expressing like here's the 4 best options to pick from and that sort of thing, much more nuanced than YouTube is used to, you still get the pushback of, well, no, that's wrong because here's my takeaway in the comments on this thing. And that's where Ending Explains start to lose me because a lot of people explain things very poorly and a lot of people need stuff to be explained to them. So sometimes you get a bad, chocolate and peanut butter situation there where you have a type of person explaining something in bad faith, for example. And then
that does happen. Yeah.
I'm just imagining the Family Guy scene where the 2 cars hit each other and he's like, you got peanut butter in my chocolate, you got chocolate in my peanut butter, and then the cop just shoots them both. That's what I'm imagining, but as you say that, sorry, had to say it.
What?
That was a real commercial that you made reference to by way of Family Guy instead of the commercial.
But that also was a thing in Family Guy.
It was.
Family Guy could be in Kingdom Hearts now.
Because it did...
It should be in Kingdom Hearts.
So
it's already in Fortnite.
In the sort of like most nuanced way, right? Peter explains the joke exists, and I think that shows you that people really are dumb, right? Like they just really are as dumb as we think they are. And so for a lot of people, yeah, you look at it and go, well, of course Tenet wasn't that hard to follow. It's really basic. It's one of the most basic movies that you could ever basic on.
You just have to be able to hear it.
There's a lot of...
If you can't hear it,
I'm sorry?
you have to be able to hear it. That's the problem.
Right? So, like, I think there's certainly a lot of people out there who just didn't get it, right? And you watch, like, there are Pulp Fiction Explained. The film is basically linear. It, like, you don't need an explanation, but Peter explains the joke, proves that most people are stupid. And so there's a lot of people out there who just won't get things, and they're not as smart, and, they don't understand. The average IQ is like 95 now. Like, so I understand why they exist. I do think that they do they can be made in such a way that they are intended to espouse a point of view that is not accurate. Intended.
There's an entire media enterprise based off of that sort of thing nowadays. For lack of a better term, or a sect of media, I should say, not an enterprise that exists, and it's problematic. But that's fine. There are a couple others here that I want to hit on out of our hot take lists, such as Branovan saying Crub could be more popular than Joe Rogan, but the algorithm won't allow it.
How did I talk about Joe Rogan in the pre-show and it's still in the regular show too?
Yeah.
Well, you just shouldn't talk about Joe Rogan so much.
Yeah, why are you so pro-Rogan?
I shouldn't, actually.
Are you pro-Rogan, Justin?
Pro-Rogan.
No, I'm actually anti-Rogan.
Anti-Gin.
I'm sin-Rogan.
Yeah, because I'm pro-Crub. I'm not pro-Rogan, I'm pro-Crub, Crub 2028. We're all running for president.
Pro-Crub 2028.
We'll be the first octuple president.
All of us. We'll all choose everything together.
Yeah. We'll all vote together. We're essentially just creating another body of Congress at that point. Vote for all 8 of us, and
it's inevitable that someone
also
will be
the Canadian. Vote for the Canadian. I mean, Ted
vote for the
Cruz,
one that's not allowed to be the president.
Ted Cruz.
We'll make it
vote for the Canadian.
Fair.
It counts.
Okay.
I mean, I won't, but someone would.
You won't vote for one.
Why you're not voting for us?
No. Actually, yeah, I would.
Oh, nice. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. You're welcome, Justin.
I have another one from 1UpComs who said that if things in the gaming market keep going the way they are currently, with dev teams being shut down essentially immediately after something comes out, and an overdependence on needless remakes or remasters, there may be another crash in the gaming market.
No.
Wasn't that just the topic that we talked about on the podcast?
It came up.
I just listened to that.
Relatively
that was the PR episode one.
It came up recently. We've talked about it on a couple different episodes of the podcast.
Yeah.
I don't think there's ever room for another crash because you have, there are always going to be people that leave the let's call it quote unquote proper games industry to make an indie studio and make their own indie game. And it doesn't matter how many of those people burn out, quit, don't make enough money, whatever it is, there will always be a next up.
Right.
We're not at the point where a crash is necessarily possible. I think that you can look at the fact that the Xbox Series consoles up until this year were actually doing better than most Xbox consoles did align sales to the current time. This year it cratered, but that's a different issue. You can look how the PS5 has no games, which one of One Up Commentary's other hot takes was the PS5 does have games. So
that's a scalding hot take. The PS5 has no games. It has no games. No games.
It's tough because in an era where the PS5 has no games is such a huge meme, it's still selling as quickly as the PS4, if not faster again at this point. Like it's on pace pretty close to what the Switch was on pace for. The only reason the Switch is like sales when you align, release date to current month. The only reason the Switch is now way ahead is because COVID happened. And the Switch's sales skyrocketed for several months.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the Switch and the PS4 were neck and neck, and the PS5 and the PS4 are neck and neck. You're not going to have a crash because people will still buy their Maddens. People will still buy their Call of Duties. There are more gamers that also play more than one game a year than ever before.
Yep.
Yeah.
Like we're at the point where the demographics of gamers, I think it's like 51% female now.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's also 60% mobile.
Yeah, like it's not going to change. Like there's not going to be a crash.
The form factor might change, but like
even if I were to take
the desire for people to play games will never really leave.
The only thing,
even if I were to take it to the most extreme and say, okay, so in a generous way, what this comment means is that we're going to see some sort of a major AAA console PC exclusive crash exclusively around, the most popular types of, even then we are talking about, not a small company or not a small industry anymore. Atari is the problem in the 1983 crash, right? It's Atari, which was a small company that represented 95% of the industry.
Exactly. Like they had so much market share.
Had a problem.
That when one thing went wrong, I mean, like Atari was the prior to Nintendo. You called games Atari, like that's how much Atari dominated. But also, Atari made so many massive mistakes that it led to the idea of third-party video games in America. Because Activision was founded because those people left Atari and knew how to make Atari games. Because before that, you made your console, you also made the games, and no one else did.
Yeah. Yep. There wouldn't be a crash, right? If not for Atari being who they are and then making the mistakes that they have and being such a large part of the industry. So like, even if we were to take it in the most generous way, do I think that the era of too big to fail is over in video games? Yes. Yes, I do. I think you no longer have the ability to just throw a couple $100 million at something and it will work. Most of this, however, is because live service is where that money's going. I think that you can't guarantee that just because Sony puts out a live service game, it's going to succeed. You can't just say,
Concord did great.
Yeah.
Concord, but more than that, right? Like, it's everything. I don't think that we've seen so many failures in the past several years from, Skull and Bones losing maybe $800 million, maybe.
Yeah, right? Concord did a lot of help for Skull and Bones by being Skull and Bones died, lost the most generous takeaway from what questionable leak sources had given was that Concord lost half as much money as Skull and Bones did. And you don't hear about Skull and Bones because nobody cared.
Nobody cared. And there's more than just that. Anthem was one of the big ones that lost a couple of years ago. There's been a lot of big failures that have lost a lot of money in the gaming industry. Do I think that era has ended? Do I think that the era where you can just be EA and put out game and game sell is over? Yes. For everybody but Nintendo. I sure do.
Yeah.
Like, when I look in the crash, I'm not thinking of just like, okay, we lose money, we lose these developers, blah, blah, blah. When I think of crash, I'm looking at it as a different point of view, is like, I could see a crash coming where we see a very big dip in AAA gaming, where more developers that used to work on those things do create their own indie studios, bring out more people. And so the crash wouldn't be specifically to gaming itself, but I could see it being a crash to AAAs where you don't see the same kind of quality that you would see over and over. You're seeing that with Ubisoft right now, for crying out loud. So when I think of crash, it's not just, we're losing the money. It's we're losing the quality, which that I could see. I think it would come back up. We get more people on board and stuff, but it wouldn't surprise me if there was a crash in a lot of these quality developers, quality games, and so on and so forth. So
it's
one
tough
of those
though, because that goes into the next up thing. Like you're not going to have like that goes into too big to fail almost, because you're not going to have Sony, for example,
almost,
Concord bombs. You're not going to see Sony unless they somehow shut down. You're not going to see them lay off every single developer and then suddenly not make games anymore. That's not how that's not how that goes. And my hot take, if you want a real one related to this sort of thing, is that I've been of the opinion, essentially since the day that Astrobot's reviews dropped. I went back and thought about it. I've been of the opinion that I have a feeling that Sony brass has been trying to, or PlayStation brass, the current group, has been trying to shift priorities essentially this whole year. And we just saw the outcome of those shifts and priorities when you have Concord get sent to die knowingly. It doesn't hit any numbers to keep it alive, so they just pull the plug outright and say we're not gonna keep delaying it. We're not gonna lose another. We're just gonna take the egg on our face. Maybe go free to play, move on. And you see Astrobot not get caught in that crossfire by way of them holding the embargo till the day before release on what might end up being game of the year. You don't do that. Like if you want, like, especially with a game that also has now sold entirely based on word of mouth and those review scores, you want those scores out as soon as possible. Sony's
They've been doing some very weird things. I mean, Until Dawn got no push. Like Sony in general, there's clearly something happening there.
And I think going to the questionable sources, what I was joking about with Concord's budget, that same source had mentioned to Colin Moriarty, M's cousin actually, had mentioned that, this was Herman Hulst's baby. Herman Hulst being the current CEO of PlayStation as a development group. Yeah. And that's where I took that report as someone has an agenda that they are pushing now. Someone is upset with his management style, which he's only had for about 8 months, or someone is upset that he was the next up, or whatever it might be. There's always inter-office politics, because if you go and you look at pretty much everything that man has said since he started moving up the ladder within PlayStation, he pushed very politically for the live service stuff once he was the talking face of the company, but he never actively pushed hard for it as much as you would expect for somebody who is trying to be public facing and almost in a WADA type way, where he wants to be out there and talking to people. And he's doing podcasts with the official PlayStation podcast that apparently exists. Surprise. I didn't know that existed.
Yeah. I was going to say, like, it sounds like he's doing it in certain spots, like not the really big public eye, but like the specifically Sony. Like there's a weird safe space bubble that he's in with that in some regard, but also he's Dutch, I'm pretty sure. He's from
sounds like
from that part of Europe. I don't remember if it's Dutch. Or I always forget. We're the number one podcast
sounds
in
like
Norway,
a German,
though.
Austrian, Dutch name.
Yeah, like he's obviously someone who can speak fluent English, but there's also the question of, do you want to put him on wider? Like, do you want to waste time putting somebody with that much work on their plate on podcasts? Probably not. Anyway, that's getting off the point that I'm making. The point that I'm making is more, I've had a feeling for the last like year or two, and then when Astrobot's reviews dropped, I was made fairly certain that I'm right, and hopefully I'm not wrong, because if I am, it's bad for everybody. That they have been trying to reclaim their legacy in a way, because right around the time Hulse is moving up the ladder, you see suddenly a larger push into, actually, we can use this port studio to port a bunch of PS1 games and PS2 games and PSP games to our library. And it's a loss leader now because it's part of the streaming service. Like, you can buy them, but it's there. Like, they're reclaiming a lot of that backwards compatibility stuff that they had gotten away from. You see with Astro, a much smaller game get pushed larger than any game they had made in the whole year, essentially, besides Helldivers, and Helldivers was just an overnight success. You see this sudden push as soon as Astrobot drops to, this is our 30th anniversary now. We're moving away from Concord. We are looking back at our past. And you get deep cuts like Mr. Mosquito coming to PSN right afterwards.
Which is wild.
I all of that together, along with all of the live service stuff being overblown to begin with, because Concord was one of the only two. It's Concord and Fair Games are the only two that were actually actively being developed as not a pet project, essentially, because the Last of Us game, that live service project got shut down, earlier this year, I think. But that was one that we knew was in development hell because Naughty Dog was a weird studio with struggling issues. I'm all over the place here because it's not really a super formulated thought, and it's such a wide ranging issue. But my point is that I think it's an interesting one with regards to the crash we were talking about, the idea of a crash in the gaming market, because I think we're more likely to see the opposite happen. I think we're more likely to see AA games start making a comeback from all these companies.
And they have been. I think they have been. The crash, the so-called crash, or I guess the death of AAA, I think is already there, right? Mm-hmm. We've already started seeing the III, II. We've already seen AA coming in. And, when you look at the biggest games of this year in terms of share of voice versus just raw revenue, right? Because like revenue, it's always Fortnite. But share of voice, Lethal Company and, other small screamer friendly, friend group friendly games where you're just kind of hanging out with a few people that content warning and those kind of games where, what are you playing? Oh, I'm playing Supermarket Together. That's not the biggest game of the, in terms of revenue, but it took a huge amount of people's interest and a huge amount of their attention. Once Human, a reasonably small, and I recognize it's, in the AAA publisher space, but that's a AA game. These are the things that we're seeing take over.
Lies of P, Stellar Blade, like the Korean game development is, we're going to see a lot of AA development push in the coming years.
Yes.
And I guess my thought was, I think you're going to see that more funded internally by these major publishers, these major console developers. Like, I don't necessarily think that you're going to see, like Insomniac's not going to go back to one game a year. But I think once we saw Spider-Man, once we saw the internals of the Insomniac hack, and we saw even Insomniac saying, we don't need this much money, stop giving us money. And the reckoning that came then from, well, now that game isn't as profitable as it could have been because they went over budget because you gave them too much of a budget, and then they then had to fulfill the scope they were given, and then they went over it because every Sony game goes over. Like, you see those sorts of things happening, and my thought is that you're going to see stuff like an Astrobot with a smaller catered team that can make something in a smaller fashion that has a lot of passion in it.
Especially if it wins Game of the Year. If
it wins Game of the Year, then like that's absolutely like that's the flag in the ground towards a new era for Sony specifically. But I think you're going to see that push back to like what Nintendo's been doing this whole time, because Nintendo doesn't really have many AAA games. They just
what's your Nintendo AAA?
Yeah, like it's Zelda and Mario.
Year one Zelda, year one Mario,
and Splatoon.
Maybe every year.
Right? Oh yeah, people love Splatoon.
You might not get a AAA in a year from Nintendo, and that wouldn't be surprising. And they've still made so much profit off of it. They've shown that it, and I mean, profit not just in terms of money, but in terms of how their reputation is viewed.
Oh God, yeah.
Right? If Nintendo put out AAA games and they failed, look at Ubisoft, right? People do not respect Ubisoft as a game developer anymore, and it has harmed them now to the point where every time a new Ubisoft game comes out, people are like, yeah, but how broken is it going to be?
Yeah.
And if they were to put out, instead of 5 tentpole games that kind of suck, they were to put out 50, smaller games for a month, right? You know what I mean? Like, yeah, you'd be like, whatever, cool. I don't care that this sucks. I'll even pay your $18 a month for Ubisoft Plus.
And to the point with Nintendo is also the fact that they're so capable, now that they're in the swing of HD-ish development, that they can sit on games for years. Like the rumor was that Dread was done for a year. They sat on it. There hasn't been a game that I can think of that either of the other companies of the big three have sat on since Ratchet 2016, when that game was done in 2015, but the movie got delayed.
And we actually talked about that last week on this very podcast where we named a couple of things that we're expecting to see on the Nintendo Switch 2, and I wouldn't be surprised if several of them are done.
Oh God, yeah. Like
you probably are.
There's no question. I think the Mario game's been done for a few months, probably.
For
whatever it will be, you know. It's such an interesting thing, and I think my closing thought on that whole multi-ranging hot take is that it takes so long for these things to develop and change that you know, we are in a 7 to 8 year game development cycle currently, and I think the fact is that even if that changes, we're another 3 years off from fully realizing it. Astrobot was still a 3 year game.
This has been the thought process, and I know you and I have talked about it probably here, but of course, you know, we talk, so maybe not here, about what the issue is with Xbox, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And the issue with Xbox is definitely that they started buying these things in 2019.
Yeah.
Right?
2018 was when it first started. 2019 was the big year.
We are still within the development cycle of the very first major games that were being picked up by Xbox. And you look at it and go, well, where are the Xbox games from all of these acquisitions? They're 70% done.
Hellblade was the first one, really. Hellblade was probably the first actually released one that I can think of that was like
pretty game.
Pretty game. And then it came out, and who talked about it? That's not a critique of the game. It's just that game came out this year.
Yeah,
we talked in the pre-show about Game of the Year discussion. Not a single soul mentioned it, and I wrote that down.
I forgot about that.
Like,
I did.
That was their big game for the year. It's that and the Starfield DLC, and oops.
Yeah, Starfield was in process before they bought Bethesda.
Yeah, like Elder Scrolls 6 would be their first buyout game.
We are years away, years away. In 2024, we are years away from seeing the actual spoils of the Xbox stuff. And so looking at that, right, like, man, it's really hard. I mean, it's super hard to say.
We're a year away. We're a year removed from essentially the official end of the Activision buyout. And we're just now getting Activision games from years ago on Game Pass. There was a comparison I saw recently. I forget where. But I think it was like a gaming pundit mentioned the thought that, you know how when Boeing bought out a couple companies like a decade ago, there was a shareholder agreement that some of the executives from that company would come into the executive suite at Boeing. Those
you're talking about McClellan.
Yes, those people are the ones that ran Boeing into the ground.
Yes,
we don't know what the board makeup is of the Xbox division of Microsoft.
Right.
But is there a chance that here's a hot take question. Is there a chance that Xbox becomes more Activision than Activision becomes Xbox?
It's possible. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, it was McDonnell. McDonnell Douglas was the company that was bought by Boeing back in the early 90s or late 90s, I guess. But all of the executives were retained, and they were given a direct path into Boeing's executives. So like, you know, when they brought this company in, even though it became Boeing and remained Boeing, the CEO of McClellan, I'm sorry, I keep saying that, McDonnell, became the CEO of Boeing. And 20 years later, now Boeings are falling out of the air, right? Like just
and is that pipeline that I guess I want to highlight just as much is it took decades, but at some point the rot builds. And I'm not saying there's necessarily rot within the Xbox ecosystem. I think if there is, it's already.
I think there is.
I think there is.
Sarah Bond and people like that, Matt Booty, you know, like they are there, and they are still rotting.
But and those were building for. I mean, like you have Phil Spencer as the figurehead. He's been at the company since day one, as far as the Xbox division of Microsoft goes.
Yep.
It's such an interesting thing, and it takes years to get to that point. It's going to take. Like, I'm surprised that Phil Spencer's had the leash he's had. Because
I'm so happy he has.
I am too, because it's going to get so much worse when he's gone, but he will be gone.
Yes.
Like that's another hot take, but I think it's pretty lukewarm. He will be gone at some point because
we expected him to be gone with Starfield.
Yeah, I'm
like, I think we talked about it, right? Like if Starfield didn't succeed, they were going to fire, and they'd have to fire Phil. But thankfully, it did well enough, I guess, that he was able to hold on. But you'll notice that all of the major quote unquote bad changes from Microsoft all happened after Starfield, because Starfield was their big last shot to prove that Phil's way worked. So yeah, these things, they take years, and we're still maybe 1 to 3 years, I guess, off from seeing the real changes from Xbox. And, you know, as we mentioned, I guess earlier tonight, actually, most of those games are going to be held back by the fucking Series S. And there's another one. There's your fourth swear jar for the night.
It'll be double interesting, because by that point we're on the next console generation. Like, you're going to have, there's been the joke that you're going to go a whole console generation without many PlayStation 5 games. We're close to going the whole generation without more than 1 or 2 Xbox games. And the ones that are now coming to PlayStation, because that strategy has shifted. And I think my final hot take for this episode of the podcast is that we're going to look back at 2024 as a tentpole year of change in the games industry.
I agree with that. I think so.
My hunch is that Astro was not just a one-off. I don't think it's just a token, fun little cute game. I think that's a game that people in power truly believed in. And I think that you're going to see more stuff like that with scaled back budgets. I think the PS5 Pro was also announced at a very inopportune time for that, because you go from, it was the meme of the we're so back. It's over. We're so back. It's over. Like Astro was the we're so back moment. And then they still have the PS5 Pro that they have to get out of the way, because that's what developers wanted. You don't listen to game developers usually, as bad as that is to say, because they always want more power. And the best games on each console are the ones that use what you have and the limitations best.
I mean, arguably the Switch, right? It's an iPhone 5. It is an iPhone 5, right? It is the same architecture as an iPhone 5. And yet the games that are out on that are consistently some of the best-selling, most loved games.
And with great art direction. Like, Astro is a game purely on art direction. That game runs at a solid 4K 60 the entire game, just about. And who talks about it? Who talks about that part of it? It's just, oh, this game's fun.
Yeah.
And I think that's a shift I think we'll see in the coming years.
And we'll give sort of like one last piece of information that sort of solidifies, I think, in my mind at least, that we're so accurate about this.
We're so back.
That we have the read, is that just today they announced that the new head of Xbox Games is the CEO of Rare, who came in and took over.
Yep, I saw that.
After they started working on Sea of Thieves.
Yes.
So he is the live service Rare CEO. What has Rare done?
They made Sea of Thieves.
What have they done?
Battletoads? I thought they had outsourced Battletoads.
No, it was Battletoads it had all the Rareware like trimmings and everything when it was coming out.
I thought that was they have a smaller incubation studio.
Yes,
I'm pretty.
Xbox.
Yeah, I don't think that was Rare. Rare has done nothing. They've had barbecues on Twitter for the last 8 years. Every time, go check out the Rare Twitter sometime.
I know.
Just look at them and look at what they're doing. They're at some party. They're not working. They're not doing anything.
No, Rare. I mean, like, I'm friends with people that work at Rare, but there's stuff they're working on. That's all I can say.
D-Lala is the studio that made Battletoads.
Yes.
So it wasn't even Rare.
Yeah.
Rare hasn't done anything, and now their CEO, who did nothing,
they made
rested on the laurels. He rested on the laurels of Sea of Thieves.
Yeah.
It's going to be such
He's
an
the head of
interesting
Xbox.
few years ahead. And we're excited to read more hot takes in future episodes. We're going to keep that Google form open so that people can filter in hot takes as they wish. So that we can come back and do one of these, down the road sooner or later.
Ooh. Okay.
Eventually, we'll come back and we'll look at ourselves.
Look at our own breakdowns of the hot takes. I mean,
this actually gave me a good idea.
Then we'll be president. So
yeah. 2028, baby.
Yeah,
it's us.
Ooh.
It's our turn.
It's our turn. Oh, that hurts.
Sean, when are you going to play Kingdom Hearts?
Today.
Really?
No.